They've noticed you.
Yeah. We warned people.
And I try to hide out here too.
You're all covered, Peter. Got you covered.
Put the mask back on.
Notice that we'd all be here,
Put it up over here.
because we're not making any decisions.
Wow.
Yeah, they're right, it's not usually this late.
It's late, isn't it?
But the train going south was coming by at like about 4:30, so it's pretty late today.
Rumbling.
That's my entertainment as well. Figure out the timing of the trains as they go by. Yeah, no, they're doing pretty well now.
It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our January 19th Select Board meeting. We have a couple of Select Board members attending by Zoom. Heather, can you hear us? And Lee Dakin, can you hear us out there?
Can hear you well.
Great.
Yeah, I hear you.
Great. The first item on our agenda is to approve our minutes from our January 5th meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. So moved. Lee Gustafson's the motion. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
And Jeff Holden's the second. Any corrections, changes, omissions, errors?
I notice right after the date, it says draft minutes. I'm not sure if that's correct.
Usually they're draft until we approve them.
Okay.
Anybody have anything on them? Heather, Lee? No, you're okay with them?
Not at this time.
I just had one small typo, I think. It's on page 1. The number at line 32. Just where the sentence Arnie thought it warranted a warned item, so it says warrant a warned item. So I just had that ED put in after warrant.
Oh, I see you. You're on page 2, Lee.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2. Oh, you're right. I didn't turn my page over
Yep.
enough. Good. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lee. On page 3, on line 31, Arnie agreed with Heather that the town people should make the decision, either way.
People, yeah.
I don't have anything else. Anybody? We're all set with them? All those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, please say aye.
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 Next item is citizens' comments. If there's someone here that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments? Anybody out on Zoom? All right, we'll move right along then on our next item, which is a discussion regarding the Cannabis Opt-in vote. Over the last, well, I guess it was the last meeting when we were talking about the town warning and the articles on it, it came up whether or not we were going to include this vote
Cannabis.
on the town warning. We had a lot of discussion about it about a year ago when it first surfaced and it was coming out that the state was legalizing it. It's come to the point where there are some places that are taking action on this. Other towns are just letting it slide and not doing anything about it. We have Gwen Zakoff from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns here to help us with any questions or concerns that we might have. And we're going to have it open to the public too, if there's any comments or questions or concerns that anybody in the public would like to address regarding a cannabis opt-in vote. What I do know about it, it seems like that this opt-in vote is strictly for the retail end of it. It doesn't involve cultivation, manufacturing, or any other part of it whatsoever. For a town to have, allow a retail establishment for cannabis in their town, they would have to have an opt-in vote. Now, I know the state has been working on this. They had I think it becomes legal in October of this year or somewhere around there. And they wanted to have everything in place by April as far as all the rules and the guidelines and stuff, which seems like a lot of work to do considering they haven't gotten that far with it. There are the first 2 rules that are online that they're taking public comment for, but the other 3 rules aren't out yet as far as the specifics on it. Basically, it seems the question comes to the town on whether we want to have this as an article on our town warning, whether we as a board would like to put it there, to have that vote, so it would coincide with our town meeting. It doesn't have to go that way. It could be a special meeting anytime during the year if we wanted to go that route. The school board might be having a bond vote during the summer also. There are some people that are saying that it might be better to wait till there was some more information regarding this before we took any action on it, because there are a lot of unanswered questions from the state also. I guess today we just got some guidance from municipalities from the Cannabis Control Board, which they just issued, and I haven't had a chance to even look at it. It came about a half an hour ago and stuff, and it's about 30 pages, and it basically affects everything that happens and how it affects the town and stuff. But I still would like to open this up for a discussion if there's anybody that would like to comment regarding this or have any questions, because Gwen, I'd like to welcome you to our meeting here, and hopefully we could take advantage of your knowledge on this issue, but it seems like there's a lot of things that are not clear about what's going on. Is there an April deadline for the Cannabis Control Board to have this thing already hashed out and
No.
all the details on it, or not?
Not to my knowledge. I also know, though, this information that Julie sent us, whatever's decided, if it's going to be opted in, it has to be by Australian ballot.
Yeah.
I would have Gwen explain it.
Gwen, can you help us out on that? Is there a deadline in April for the Cannabis Control Board to have a decision regarding all the rules and regulations that pertain to this item or not?
Hello, everybody. Gwen Zacher from the League of Cities and Towns. I'm happy to be here. So the April deadline that you're speaking of is not necessarily a deadline, but that's actually the first hard date that the initial legalization language had to begin accepting applications for cannabis operations. So the reason that's an important date is that you have to have really the rules written in order for licenses and applications to begin sort of their processing. So in a sense, yes, April is sort of a hard deadline for rules to be promulgated. A slight correction to what was said earlier, all 5 rules have been issued. The last 3 of them, the first 2 are before the Secretary of State's LCAR process. The last 3 are in the works, but they are all public for public reading. I will say that those 5 rules have very, very little to do with municipal regulations. There is some language. I'm not familiar if Chester has a wastewater facility in town or what kind of regulations you have there too, but that's sort of the only thing in those rules that would be impacted at the local level is if you if you have wastewater in your community. The rules, I shouldn't say rules, the guidance that you have, I think Julie had forwarded to you. I had just gotten this email at 4 p.m. this afternoon from the Cannabis Control Board myself. You actually probably are one of the few towns that has actually seen it. It's literally hot off the press. I've only had really a couple minutes to scan through it. And those, it's a little unclear exactly what those guidance documents are supposed to do, because what the underlying law says is that the Cannabis Control Board will provide rules to local cannabis commissions, and those sort of local cannabis commissions are similar in design to local liquor control. So the Select Board acts as that entity for your community. The idea is to have the cannabis, local cannabis commission issue local licenses, but using the rules that are given by the Cannabis Control Board. I am guessing that the rules, the guidance that was issued this afternoon are sort of the rules that the Cannabis Control Board would like the local cannabis commissions to use. That's a little unclear. We had initially thought that the first 5 rules that were promulgated would be the rules that the local boards would be using, but after reviewing them over the last several weeks, it's very clear that they're not. So it's a little hazy right now to see exactly where the rules were coming from, but regardless, the rules that you have that were issued today, or the guidance that was issued today, is really what we have to work from in terms of more detail other than what the underlying law says. So there is a little bit of a lag time. I mean, the Cannabis Control Board has done a really phenomenal job in a really short period of time to get things done to get this market up and running. But it's middle end of January. April's just around the corner. The last week and this week, the legislature, particularly the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee, has been working on a fee bill to deal with the fees that are going to go into exactly how much licenses are cost, exactly how much fees local governments will be getting when they issue licenses, and those sorts of things. And those have to be ironed out before April. So I hope that helps a little bit. I don't mean to ramble on, but that's sort of what I can provide to you right now.
Yeah, it does, Gwen, and I appreciate the information that you've just given us. It seems like it's a little premature, a little early for us to really delve into this too much without knowing exactly what how we're going to go about it, or if we're going to go about it. At this point, I would welcome any comments from citizens or any questions or concerns. And if you would like to make any questions or comments, please come up to the microphone and state your name and go for it. Go ahead, Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Blair. I actually own the CBD shop here in town, Down to the Roots. My perspective of this is that us waiting so long to get this vote with more information that's coming out later isn't going to alter anything that's going to be decided at all. Because we're asking the town if we want to allow the retail for marijuana to be happening in our town. So our neighboring town, Londonderry, has already opted in 100%. So they've opted in. Myself, I'm going to put this out there. I've got an investor that I have on the line right now who lives in Londonderry, but I've actually told them my preference is to be here in Chester to help out my town with this market. And being that Ludlow has already denied it twice, it's an opportunity for Chester to be able to capitalize on that and to get that industry in our town. Marijuana is actually, in cannabis in general, is the future. It's already here. It's not going anywhere. And this is only asking for our town to be able to have the right to get our voices out there in a town vote saying if we want it or not. The rules and regulations can come down afterwards. We're not asking the state to tell us, what do you want to charge us? I already have an idea of some type of loose regulations that they're going to ask me for a license fee because I'm following these regulations in all their talks. But all we're asking is for a yes or no so we can opt in. If we opt in and the town doesn't like it and something goes wrong, we as a town or you as a select board have the right to be able to opt out of it as well, is my understanding. So if we're able to opt in and I'm able to get my business plan, that's going to take time. I'm going to have to get a location. I'm going to have to get my business plan situated. I'm going to have to get employees, which, as everybody knows right now, is almost impossible. I have to get this all in line. If we wait down the line, I'm going to have very little to no time. October 1st is when Vermont will let mom and pop shops like myself open a dispensary. May is when they're going to let the state. Is what their regulations are, as my understanding. If we wait and wait and wait, I'm not going to have time to get that deadline so I can open up in October. And yes, I can open up later, but then you're giving the edge and the opportunity to a town nearby over in Londonderry to be able to do that when my investor will fall off completely. And they'll tell me, well, if we can take it over to Londonderry, we're going to do it in Londonderry and forget Chester. So that, and myself, having the CBD shop in town, it's a legal CBD shop. All I need is a retail license. And I'm going to tell you right now, the amount of calls that I get for Chester saying, are you a dispensary that I can come and buy medical or even legal recreational marijuana is absolutely crazy. I have to tell them, no, that's not legal until October for me to be able to do that in Vermont. And that's the state regulations. But we get it all the time. I get the phone calls day in, day out. So that's my input.
All right, thank you, Scott. One thing that you did mention that, and I think I've read this somewhere, that when a town opts in, and then there's establishments that are put in place, even though you opt out, the establishments that are in place do not go away. It just stops any more new ones from coming in. So there is that part of it too. Any other questions, concerns, or comments regarding this issue?
I just want to make a statement that I appreciate all the information, Gwen, that you gave us and that has been presented to us from VLCT and elsewhere. I am uncomfortable with the lack of specificity and detail in what we have already, that I don't know that I would even know where we were going if we decided to opt in, because it's not clear to me exactly what we would be opting into. So my preference would be, let's wait until more detail comes down the road. Sorry, Scott, but I think that I can't, in all good conscience, vote for something that we have no understanding where we would end up in a year, 2 years, 5 years. No.
If it's okay, I just add a little bit.
Go ahead.
We're not, just for clarity's sake, because the rules have not been, finalized, and just because the guidance hasn't been read cover to cover, does not mean that there isn't clarity in sort of what towns and cities can sort of anticipate. I think it's pretty clear that local governments will continue to have the ability to zone and basically have authority or control over licensed establishment, whether they be retail or otherwise, because again, you're correct, retail is the only thing that you're really opting in or out of. You have no say in whether or not you're going to get applications for growers or manufacturers or any of those things. And those folks, across the board for any licensee, they're still going to have to go through the state regulatory process, which is, to be quite honest, very onerous on the applicants. And there's a lot of hoops to jump through, ranging from, water quality to security measures and banking and all sorts of things. So, there is not a lot of clarity in terms of maybe the details of exactly how the application and licenses at the local level are going to work. But I think if I were to be a gambling guessing woman, I would say that I wouldn't rely on any new crazy authority that you're going to get. Just go off of sort of the basis that you're going to be issuing licenses under the rules that the Cannabis Control Board puts forth. The Cannabis Control Board commissioners has said to me directly that they're going to allow towns to regulate, obviously zoning and any nuisance sort of ordinance things aside from the licenses, and will be able to revoke licenses or suspend licenses if licensees are in violation of the underlying license. So I've been telling towns, keep your, look at your zoning, see how they tie into, if someone were to want to get a license for, let's say, a large grow operation or a manufacturing operation or a laboratory, like where might that be in your community? You know, you can't say no to those folks. It's only retail that you'd be able to say no to. You're still going to have to accommodate them to a certain degree, so long as your zoning would, you know, generally allow them. So I think, and I can't tell your community how to go about things, but I think it would be remiss to not say that, you know, there is a little bit of clarity in terms of the overall operations of how licenses and establishments will be issued and established, but the minor details are still coming by. But I wouldn't be banking on any new earth-shattering powers that are going to be given to local governments. I would rest your head on what zoning you have in place and what ordinances you have in place.
I also am very interested to read the email that came in today, which I have not read, did not know it had come in. So I look forward to learning more.
Gwen, this is Lee Gustafson, and over the past few days, I probably read 150, 200 pages of information that has been published by either you folks or the Cannabis Control Board, including the municipal guidance document that was sent out this afternoon. And I have to tell you, I am not as confident as you seem to be in the amount of clarity that there is. I still have hundreds of questions relative to what our responsibility would be. Not to disagree with you, but this document, the municipal guidance says the municipality may not use their zoning power or their ordinance power in a way that would have the effect of prohibiting the operation of cannabis establishments. So I don't know, is that contradictory to what you just said? I'm not sure where that, or how to interpret that particular thing. So notwithstanding what you just said, I'm not comfortable at this point that I understand and would need a lot more help or assistance in learning what we're getting ourselves into.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I think there's a very clear recognition that the 99% of the information, whether it be underlying statute or the rules that are being issued or the guidance that's being given, is really meant for every other aspect of the cannabis marketplace other than municipalities. So I'm gleaning basically, you know, the landscape of how things are going to be, how the landscape's going to look based off of what the rules and the guidance says, based off of the state's design for what this marketplace will look like, because they've honestly given very little control at the local level for what local governments can do in their own regulations. That's essentially what I was getting at, but I don't disagree with you.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question, if I could. Do you know where the Cannabis Control Board got the framework for the rules that have, or the draft rules that have been put in place?
Are you talking about the rule, not the guidance document from today, but you're talking about the initial 5 rules?
Yes.
Those are based off of underlying statutes. So basically the legislature says, hey, Cannabis Control Board, you need to go and do these things. So those five rules are basically the Cannabis Control Board putting together what the legislature had asked them to do under the initial legalization legislation.
So I know that they work with a couple other organizations that help states navigate the various aspects of this. Are these regulations coming from some other state, or do you know if, because I can't imagine that they drafted these things from scratch in the last couple of months.
Yeah, so the Cannabis Control Board, again, because they had such a really tight window in order to get what they needed to get done. So within their budget, they'd hired out consultants, 2 different consultants that had deep ties in the Massachusetts marketplace and the Colorado marketplace. So these consultants who specialize in cannabis legalization at the governmental level and beyond were hired to help sort of the Cannabis Control Board get the sort of work done that they needed to get done. So I think my understanding is that Massachusetts was sort of the guiding state in terms of how they were sort of borrowing language or ideas or policies or implementation tools that the legislature was asking for in Vermont. So I think the best, state to compare the two would be Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else have any questions or concerns? Would like to make any statements? Heather, did you have your hand up a little while ago?
Yeah, I did. I'm sensitive to the fact that it could be looked at that we're dragging our feet. On the other hand, the guidance from the Cannabis Control Board for municipalities came to me early, I'm told now, at 4:10 this afternoon. And I don't understand the responsibilities for the select board. And if there's no responsibility, sometimes that can be onerous also. So I don't understand it. I haven't had time to study this. I do feel strongly that the voters really should decide. I think we should at some point put it out to the voters, Arnie. But at this time, I think it would be far better to have some public hearings and educational public hearings of some sort to let people who are voting understand what this involves. So what does it involve in the town? What are the benefits to the town? What are the downsides to the town? I have not heard that specifically articulated for Chester. And so from my point of view, we're having more voting this year. We're having a primary in August. We're having the general election in November, and another election in November. And then, Arnie said that there was some time that the school may be voting.
There is a possibility of a bond for the school renovations that are in the process that they're talking about.
I think there's a lot to this, and if we don't fully understand it, what specifically our duties and responsibilities are and aren't as a select board, and I think as a town manager, not to speak for you, Julie, I feel it's premature to give it to the voters who probably don't understand what it means for Chester also. So although I'm compassionate and I'm all for supporting small business, I'd like to know more.
All right, thank you, Lee. Yeah, right, Heather, sorry. There's a couple of hands up on Zoom. Robert Need.
Thank you, Arnie. For me, this is really a question of due diligence. I think there's an awful lot of information that needs to be evaluated and considered and digested. And I agree with Lee, we're just not there as a community, and certainly I don't envy the select board in trying to make a decision based on what you know now, which is somewhat confusing, and you haven't had the opportunity to digest it either. So I really think this ultimately should go to the voters, but I agree that it's premature. There's an awful lot of unknowns that need to be clarified going forward. And as Gwen mentioned, ultimately the only control mechanisms that the town will have is zoning and nuisance laws. The nuisance laws are pretty limited in terms of how they can be applied. And in terms of zoning, our zoning is all but silent on this issue. So there seems like there's work to be done there as well. So I think that the decision should be made as to when to put it out there should be based on, do we have enough information to make that decision? And certainly the hope that, this would give a competitive advantage to one or two local businesses is not enough to overcome what's not known and what the overall impact on the community would be. So I would hope that we would wait to move this forward until we had enough information to make a good, comprehensive judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Barry Pinsky, do you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you, Arnie. Yeah, as a member of the planning board, and not having been to the dispensary in Massachusetts, but having friends that have gone down there, I believe they have a fairly steady line of traffic and law enforcement there. It may have changed now that it's been there for a while, but I respect Scott wanting to have a business and move forward or something like that. But I think that obviously this sort of thing is going to have to come with some sort of a impact study, and to have a line of traffic, line of cars around the green wanting to buy weed is probably not something that the town of Chester really would want, because it would take up a lot of parking spots. So I think that if we're going to do this, it has to be a zone in a place where there's adequate parking and traffic and in and out and all of the stuff that happens when someone opens a business. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Kathy?
So Gwen, since you're here, I have a couple questions for you. People talk about zoning as having some impact on regulation, but would that not just be that there is retail allowed? Are the zoning bylaws supposed to say you can't sell this particular item in this district?
I'll try to answer that the best that I can. So just as I believe Robert had said earlier, sort of a gleaning from your zoning regulations that you're silent to cannabis. I wouldn't view it in that way. I would tell towns to look at their definition sections of their zoning and their subdivision bylaws to see how they define retail, how they define manufacturing. Every town's a little bit different. So, you don't have to necessarily have a definition for a cannabis establishment or a grower or a cultivator or those sort of things. But if a definition, meets the sort of the look of what a retail establishment or a laboratory or a manufacturer might be in the cannabis marketplace, they would just apply the same. It would be the same thing if you were getting, a permit or asking for conditional use review or site plan review for any other, business. So you don't necessarily have to redefine your bylaws to accommodate cannabis. It probably is already accommodated in your bylaws to a degree just by them meeting other definitions therein.
Well, no, I'm not really concerned about accommodating it. I'm more concerned about how it gets regulated. And it sounds like it's a lot like liquor. Like, we have a liquor store in Chester that has a retail permit from the zoning administrator. And we look to the Liquor Control Board to make sure that they're doing everything properly. And it sounds like this would be similar in that a retail permit is all that the zoning bylaws would address. And it's up to the Cannabis Control Board to be sure that the person who decides to sell has the proper license. Is that how that's going to work?
So as I understand it, both the state and local governments will have to, or the applicant will have to verify to the state and local governments that they have met the underlying permits that are required, whether they be hooking up to a wastewater system or getting a zoning permit or something else. So there's going to have to be some verification at both those levels that they met all of those underlying obligations. So
for the purposes of this opt-in, opt-out, we're only talking about retail. That's all that this vote is about, is will Chester allow the retail sale of cannabis? Is that true?
The opt-in vote is only for whether or not you're going to allow retail sales in your community.
Okay. All right.
And Arnie?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Go ahead, Heather.
Is there is there anything that we can put in the zoning regulations specifically, like no cannabis sales within X amount of so you're saying, you're shaking your head no. So we have lack of control, really.
Yes.
All right. So lack of control has ramifications too. So I think we need to look at this.
Just to be clear, the underlying initial legislation that set this all up basically said that towns can zone, towns can do all these things, but what they cannot do is if a town opts in, if your community, if you do have a vote and you decide to opt in, you can't then go into your zoning regulations and make it so that it's impossible for someone to start a retail operation in your community. That's how it's said. I don't understand how that would play out in a court system and chicken before the egg kind of conversation, but I would tell towns from my legal perspective to probably not use your zoning as a weapon if your community opts in. I think
by all means, I do not want to weaponize our zoning, but cannabis, alcohol sales, things like that, there are people in our community that are sensitive to that. And what you've just said lets me know that we do have, it would be just like any other retail with the control and that we have over it. But I am not suggesting that we weaponize at all our zoning. That's not my intent at all.
So Arnie, if I could just jump in here, Part F of the municipal guidance states buffer zones that the board has established. And under board rules, a retail cannabis establishment cannot operate in any location where it would be in violation of the drug-free school zone law to sell a regulated drug. This means cannabis retailers cannot operate if the store would be on a property that abuts a school property and if the retail operations would occur within 500 feet of the school property. So the guidance to the municipalities has some language in it that would prohibit or restrict where a retail establishment could be.
But that's about the only one that's in there regarding it as far as the location goes.
Yeah,
otherwise it's a zoning thing.
Yeah, and it's very clear that you can't amend your zoning regulations to prohibit.
Yeah.
Right.
And the impression I got is that you can't be specific about marijuana sales or cannabis sales and break it out separately in your zoning. If it's retail and that's what it's going under, that's what it's going to be under. And you can't just say, well, except for or not this, and cannabis could be allowed here. You can't have specific rules just for cannabis.
Exactly.
Is that?
Well, and that's good for the voters to understand prior to us voting. It's important that all the citizens who are voting understand that this would be treated in the zoning just like any other retail. So pros, cons, whatever, that's information that we should be informing voters of.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or concerns or comments? Mr. Record?
I have one.
Record, I'm not for or against, but I just wondered, is there some financial benefit to a town if it comes to Chester or it goes to Londonderry, or just the state makes the money on it?
State makes the money.
I can hop in with that one. This is my favorite subject.
Go ahead.
The legislature has been, I'll be a little bit more specific. The House of Representatives in the state has been, and even more specific, the House Ways and Means Committee has been very objectionable to sharing revenues or any taxation authority to local governments for cannabis. So unless you are one of the 13 towns, which I know Chester is not one, if you are one of the 13 towns that has a local option sales tax, you will get just like if you were selling a widget or an ice cream cone or whatever, anything that you normally get a sales tax from, you would be getting that revenue if you had a local option sales tax in your community. Your community does not. As of now, there is no money coming to your community for anything. The only money that's being proposed right now is a fee, And that fee is really an administrative fee for the administration of issuing licenses at the local cannabis commission level. Similar to a liquor control license, it probably will fall anywhere between $100 and $500 is what it's looking for. And that's for each individual license, no matter if it's retail or otherwise. So unless your community were to get a local option sales tax, you're not going to be getting any financial benefit.
And that tax, it's 14% that the state is going to levy?
So there's a 14% excise tax, which is a new tax, and then the 6% sales tax, which is the normal customary. So combined, it's a 20% overall tax. Wow. And the state's going to take up that 14% and do what they want with it. And then the 6% as of now is supposed to be going into after school programs and addiction and recovery sort of things. Right now in the legislature, there's still sort of, everyone's vying for this new sort of sin tax money and figuring out who can benefit from us. We've been trying for years to get a little slice of it, but again, the Ways and Means Committee in the House is very resistant to this, and it's very unfortunate. So I wouldn't rely on any of that money, but that 20% is going to be used by the state, or the state's going to decide how to divvy it up. And right now, local governments, other than, we do have some advocates in the Senate right now that are great and are really pushing for some slice of the pie for local governments. But unfortunately, whenever it gets to conference committee or the end of the road, we just can't make it happen in the House.
We've seen this before, where the state decides to tax and tell us what to do and how to do things, and no money comes along with it. It's too bad that I know that earlier in the discussions there were some people that wanted the local municipalities that opted in to get part of that 14% or the 6% sales tax they wouldn't, but that 14% excise tax, to some of it to go back to the towns to help with any of the issues that might come because of this. But I guess that's not going to happen no matter what.
Well, the fight's not over. But we're still advocating for this. There's there's 4 bills right now. They were just testified to this week in the Senate Finance Committee that are going to readjust and have different proposals. Some of it going to the state colleges. Some of it, there's even a proposal from Senator White, or the lovely Senator White in Windsor, who is proposing a 4% of the sales tax to go to local governments, which we would be thrilled with. We'd be thrilled with 1%, to be honest with you. So it's still an option, but unless we have a lot of communities and a lot of local government officials calling their folks in the House of Representatives, it's been a hard mountain to climb with not a lot of people behind really fighting for it.
Well, that's unfortunate, because I think that would influence a vote in a town regarding this issue about a 4% or a 2% or a 1%, and not knowing that makes it even harder to make a decision.
Yep. Don't disagree.
Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I really don't have enough information. I mean, I literally just got this, and I haven't even had a chance to open it up. I mean, and it doesn't sound very favorable to, helping the town out at this point. I have no problem with people using it recreationally, as long as they're smart about it. But it just, as far as this goes, I need more information to push it, to move it forward.
So what I'm gathering from the board, the consensus is that we're going to let this slide for today, and it's not going to end up on our town warning for the town meeting this year, and to do a little more research, to gather a little more information, and hopefully the state will be able to provide us with some more information and some more definition about how this all is going to work, especially the financial part of it too. And we could take this up and address it at a future meeting. Is that the consensus of the board?
I agree. Yep.
Hold on a second. Go ahead, Bill. We got another public comment.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I'd like to hear more discussion. I spoke with our representative over the weekend. The dollars and cents that would come into this community, it basically would be nil. And I believe that you will have to establish the local option tax. That hurts business. Now, the planning board has been working diligently to establish a friendly environment here for business to come in. That's not, in my feeling, that's counterproductive. You only have to go to New Hampshire, and of course, nobody goes to New Hampshire, I understand that, but I see a lot of Vermont license plates. What I would ask, if this is going to be discussed and information disseminated to the taxpayers, I think that's a good idea, but I do believe that this should be at an annual meeting, not a special meeting one Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I've seen the results of those sometimes, and people, for a variety of reasons, don't really get represented. So I would ask the board that this be at an annual meeting where on town meeting day, when by ballot, that people can make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else before we move on? Any other comments?
Hey, just one quick comment, Arnie.
Go ahead, Barry. Hang in there, Scott.
Thank you. It seems to me that the reality of this coming and how it will fit into our culture is probably down the road somewhere. I think that a business, opening of this nature would have a hard time meeting the performance standards that we have because of the traffic, and that would be the biggest hurdle for them. So I'm not saying I'm against this, but it sounds like everybody is kind of on the, what I'm thinking is probably a good page to be on. It just needs a little bit more time, and it's probably better to have some of these open in other towns to kind of get the surge and deal with the traffic and the zoning and all that. And then when this is more like a common thing, a store can open. It's not going to have a huge impact. It's not going to be lines of cars. There'll be references on traffic studies in other places and how this works, so that they can meet the performance standards, and then it'll happen. And it's unfortunate for people like Scott that are anxious to do business, but the amount of money he'd have to spend to come up with the performance study that would pass, I think, would be a ton. And I don't know where they would get that information, and I don't know how that would even work. It'd be like a Dunkin' Donuts right now if we opened up a dispensary somewhere in town. Anyway, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
So a couple of things. I just want to make it known, the reason that I come here and I have not put a petition out to the town, which is my right, if I'm correct, I could ask for 150 votes or signatures, and I could bring it to a special meeting, was because I wanted to cooperate with the town and with the select board, because this is what we were told a year ago, that we would not be dragging our feet, and we were looking for these regulations. So I just want to make it just some clearance for myself. If the select board today is deciding not to put this on this, do I have the right to be able to do that petition still? And okay, yes. I just want to make sure that's 100% clear.
What is the date on that?
Well, I'm not saying for the town meeting, because
Right.
that's already gone by.
Right. When you do a petition, it's 5% of the voters, and then the select board has to put it to the voters in a certain amount of time. And I do not, off the top of my head, Gwen, maybe you know, the number of days that goes by before you have to put it before the voters.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear that was still an option.
There is a path.
Okay,
without the select board
okay.
to have the town vote on
I can
it.
send you the statute.
All right, thank you.
I'd just like to say that I don't think the select board's dragging their feet. The state has a history of saying they're gonna have information for us, and then we don't get it on time. And it's like when they legalized it, that, and everybody else seemed to know what they were able to do. They could have it legally, but they didn't give any. The guidelines going to law enforcement were way slow. So there was a while they were in limbo. And I just hate to see something like that happen here. I'm not, like I said, I'm not for or against at this point, but definitely need more information to act correctly on it.
So I'm actually pretty upset
And we
with the
have to-
state at this point.
Hang in there, Lee.
Because I feel like they are putting us in a very, very awkward position by requiring us to do something or vote on something, or as a select board to promote this or bring it to a vote, let me put it that way, without giving us all the tools or all the information that we need to do it. So I just feel like we're not being treated fairly by the state, that we don't have the information that we need to do this in a reasonable and responsible way. And Scott, to your point, Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been over a year since the last time, almost a year since the last time we discussed this. And that's not fair to you, but it's also not fair to us as a select board to be put in a position where we have to make a decision to do something when we don't have all the information to make that decision well.
Well put. Lee, you had something else you want to say?
Well, it's really not something else. It's pretty much to echo Lee in the respect that if you think about it, we just got new information at 4 o'clock this afternoon. You know, and we need time. People need time to understand it and go with it. I mean, there's certain things the LCT gave us as far as how to vote for it and so forth, and opt-in only and zoning and all that jazz. But bottom line is, when today we're having our meeting at 6 o'clock and something comes in at 4 o'clock, I haven't had time to look at that. So I agree with Lee that we need to kind of take a step back and recognize that we've had some good discussion. We're going to have more discussion.
All right, thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Arnie?
Thank you.
Heather? Go ahead, Heather.
Hi. I want to also just say ditto to Lee and Lee. Thank you.
Well, it's pretty clear where the board stands on this issue at this time. We're not going to be taking a vote on it. We're not going to be putting it on the town warning for town meeting this year, but we will have some discussions in the future once there's some more information regarding the more specific information on how this would affect our town and how it all works. And I would just like to thank Gwen for being with us tonight and answering the questions and participating, so I appreciate it.
Wish I had more answers for you all, but
well,
we had to join.
We thought we were going to have.
It's evolving.
Yeah, we thought we were going to have a lot more answers by this time also when we discussed it last year, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. But thank you. Next item on our agenda, I would need a motion to enter into a public hearing regarding an interim zoning bylaw.
So moved.
Second.
Lee Dakin is the motion. Lee Gustafson's the second. Any discussion on it? Basically, this it's a public hearing to discuss an interim amendment to the Unified Development Bylaws. All those in favor of entering into this public hearing, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? So in your package, you got some information regarding a proposed interim amendment to the Unified Development Bylaws and some background information on this. On January 3rd, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to expand their interim bylaw amendment from 2 years to 5 years, that a non-conforming use, if discontinued, may be reestablished. So the process and how it works, I believe this, if it does get passed, it's valid for 2 years, Julie? Is that how that?
The interim is good for 2 years.
And it could be extended for another year afterwards?
Correct.
And they're asking for this because
why don't you maybe want to let them
Yeah.
make a presentation on it? So I don't know if Preston wants to do that or.
Go for it, Preston.
Preston Bristow, your zoning administrator. I've been on the job going on 8 months now.
Yes, we're happy to have you.
How time flies. Anyway, what was included in the select board package, there's a public hearing notice, there's a summary for the select board on the legal aspects of an interim bylaws amendment, which I was the principal author of. And then there is a history and reasons for the proposed interim bylaw amendment, which Kathy Hasbrook, as the Planning Commission chair, was the interim author of. And I have had reason to go through the older files in Chester, and the interim bylaws amendments have been used on several occasions. The most recent was in 2018 to allow a snowmobile refueling station at the Stonehearth Inn. And an interim bylaws amendment is provided in statute as a way under emergency rules to do something quickly, with the expectation that within 2 or 3 years you'd come up with a better, more permanent solution. This came up because the Baba Louie Bakery building, it's a complicated thing. They were in business for many, many years, but the zoning bylaws got changed from underneath them in 2014, so that what was before 2014 was allowed and after 2014 becomes non-conforming. And because they haven't sold the building for at least 2 years after they discontinued, they lose the right to reestablish. And when I was hired as your zoning administrator, there were two things that were identified that I should work on. One was junk, and one was our policy on non-conforming uses. I'll just say that Chester's policy on non-conforming uses is not unusual, but what I will also say is that there's been some big shifts in how people look at zoning. And it used to be that people looked at zoning as pure districts. A residential district will be only residential. Commercial will be only commercial, and an industrial will be only industrial. And now communities are moving much, much more into mixed districts, and it's also realized that life just isn't cookie cutter like that anymore. And so I look at this, you know, the current purchaser is Sugar Bob's, possibly, and there is a representative who is listening in right now, but that may not be the purchaser. It's just, from my way of thinking, it was a tangible way for the Planning Commission to say, yeah, we really need to put this on the top burner. And while the Planning Commission voted unanimously, they weren't completely unanimous in their view of it, but I think ultimately the feeling was that just simply substituting a one-word change, 2 to 5, was the simplest way to do this. And is there an element of risk? Yeah, because right now the bylaw says within 2 years you can reestablish without asking anyone. You don't need a permit, you need to go to the DRB. Well, now it's going to be 5 years. Is there a little risk? Yeah, there's a little risk. But I think we felt that it was the simplest change and that we would like within, well, we hope within 6 months to come back with a more permanent fix. And the terminology we've been using is that more permanent fix would be to try to say that there are certain legacy uses in town that have been there for a long time and we like them and they work, and therefore let's protect them and not say, if you don't sell the building within 2 years, you're gone. So I think with that, I did provide you a suggested resolution here for you too after the hearing is over if you choose to, but with that, I think I'll just sit down and let you have any questions.
One thing, Preston, that you did mention about Baba Louie's, it's not just for Baba Louie's. This is for all businesses in town. This isn't for a specific business that we're crafting this change. It's because it seems like the old regulation was too restrictive and too confining that you weren't allowed to have that flexibility.
I think we've all heard the term spot zoning, and of course, I feel very strongly that this is a zoning change for the entire town for all zoning districts. I did identify that there are at least 3 properties that I think fall into this category. But yes, first of all, I don't think it's spot zoning. I don't think we would be challenged with that. And secondly, the intended fix beyond this is to look even broader. We would probably have more involvement of the DRB, but to look even broader.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns or comments regarding this amendment? Any board members, any questions?
I don't have questions, but I do want to thank Preston for that presentation. And I thought that the summary for us that was proposed for tonight's talk or public hearing was very well done and made me understand more than I had in the past.
So it's a pretty simple fix. We just need a motion.
Yep.
Well, first we're going to have to close the hearing.
Then go into the next item.
Make sure there's no one else that would like to speak regarding this issue. Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Lee, Heather?
Well, I just see that Barry's hand's up.
I think it's been up for a while. Harry,
Well, I just put it up.
Oh, go ahead, go for it.
All right, I thank you. I'm sorry to jabber on. This was really one of the things that I got behind as a planning board member. I mean, we have an opportunity to really help a business owner in our community that was having a hard time selling their building and a potential business move into town. And when we had our initial debates, it was like, do we do something that makes this take longer? And then I remembered the snowmobile deal, and Preston chimed in. I think they did a great job writing it, as Lee mentioned, and I really hope that the board moves to move this forward. I think it's a necessary thing that we put a lot of work into, and it's something that we can hang our hat on as a planning board. I think it's really a good thing for our town. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
So who made the motion to, Lee Gustafson's the motion? Is there a second on it?
I'll second it.
And Jeff Holden's the second. All those in favor of adjourning the public hearing notice, meeting, please say aye.
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 And now we can just go to the adoption of the interim zoning bylaw. And I guess we're looking for a motion that states, shall the town of Chester Select Board adopt an interim bylaw amendment under 24 VSA, subsection 4415, that consists of changing 2 years to 5 years under Article 3.19, Section D, subsection 1B of the Town of Chester Unified Development Bylaws as follows. Non-conforming use shall not be reestablished if such has been discontinued for a period of 5 years or has been changed to or replaced by a conforming use. Intent to resume a non-conforming use shall not confer the right to do so. So that's the motion we're looking for.
So moved.
Second.
Lee Gustafson's the motion and Lee Dakin's the second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank the zoning board for their work on this, and I think it's going to be definitely a help for quite a few small businesses in town that have been trying to sell where they sit around in a non-conforming area. And the next item on our agenda is right back with the Planning Commission. They're here to discuss a plan that they have for parking on the Cobley Street parking area near the Village Green. And Kathy, I guess are you the one that's going to be speaking to this?
Start first, and Peter will pick up some of it too. We wanted to simplify the Village Green zoning district bylaws, and parking can get awfully complicated. And Peter and I thought maybe that it would make sense to figure out how many spaces we have now, how many are actually needed, and maybe we can just say, if you're on the green, you've got enough space. And so as we were tramping around the green and the surrounding area, we look at Cobley Street. There's a lot of parking available on Cobley Street. And when we were speaking to some of the merchants, there was discussion about, well, sometimes tenants who live in the buildings park in the public spaces on the green, and that uses up the spaces available to customers. And Peter is saying, there's so much behind the green to look at, and there's all that space on Cobley Street. So can't we connect them? And I am a fan of public footpaths. So I was very intrigued by the fact that there's a footpath there now. It's worn from the Cobley Street lot to the back of the Main Street Parking Association. And
Sorry, Kathy, could you repeat where it goes to, what it connects to?
from the Cobley Street lot. So
Yeah, I'm looking at the map, so just, I couldn't understand what the second property was. The which one?
If you're looking at the map with the property lines on it?
Yep.
Okay, it's going to the back of Minerva. The Main Street Parking Association's kind of confusing.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last bit.
Hang on a second.
Okay, okay. Yep. Yep, thank you. I just couldn't hear what you said, so I appreciate the,
So that parking lot is behind the church there you're talking about?
Cobley Street is,
I know
yeah,
Cobley Street, but the
okay, yeah.
one,
to
the other
to-
parking lot it's going to connect.
It's behind Mediterranean and Six
Quilt
Loose
shop.
Ladies.
Behind the quilt shop.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's, well, when my husband and I had the in Victoria in 1995, you paid $300 a year to let your guests park there during snowstorms. So it's been there a very long time. It's like it incorporated in 1977, I think. But it's just away from the athletic fields to the green. And it's not that far from the edge of the Cobley lot to that spot. And I think kids and probably some grown-ups use that a lot. So the question we have for you is, this would involve, we'd need to make it a real path. And it would be maintenance and things like that, but it would also give us a lot of parking spaces. And are you interested in something like that?
I guess the question I have, Kathy, is would we have permission of the property owner to make that a legal path?
Yeah.
That's my question as well.
All right, so what we actually looked at and more it fell into was that you want a walkable downtown. And although the path leads to the back of what is that, if you look, that property is really confused. And if you were trying to get through there, you'd have a problem. The town actually pretty much has an existing drainage right-of-way that goes through the church.
Okay.
And I think because when I look at the church and I look at that property right now, we're using the lawn behind the church as a drainage basin for Main Street. So if you wanted to make a path and you said you're going to have to fix the drainage back there anyway, you could, the easiest way is actually to go through the church and say, we'll give you back your back lawn and fix the drainage. But the big thing is, when you look at this, when I read the master plan, I was really disappointed in how it didn't bring things together. That, you know, they talked about things, but it wasn't like, see, the Cobley lot is separated and it needs to be brought into everything else. Here is a really nice space, and it's only the back of two properties that abut the ball field there that just need to be cleaned up a little bit and mowed, and it would look like it would become a park. The park would extend into the town. You would like that, the whole thing to be incorporated so it flows to your downtown. Yes, there's a parking problem, and we'll sit down. I have a pretty detailed parking study that we're going to go over the DRB that we didn't bring tonight because you can go back and forth through the very deep details. But the big thing, if you just read this, we're a planning board. When we went and walked it and looked at what was there and how it would integrate with the businesses there, it's like, here's short money change that makes a big difference to your downtown, you know, and that just became blatantly obvious. And the thing is, because we're kind of, in my mind, the way that I'm going to continue to do this is, as we get to a zone, it's going to be a multitude of walks to walk through it and actually see everything that's there. And I believe that this kind of proposal that we're putting in front of you, this could go, you have a master plan implementation committee, you could put it to that, you know, we can plug things into there, but this is pretty obvious, and it's a short, the walk is a short money change, but to integrate Cobley into the rest of the village, it's a no-brainer for the walkable downtown.
I assume there would have to be some signage involved there, so people weren't parking on the private lots behind the buildings there or whatever?
You see, if you opened up the Cobley lot, and you make a walkable path, you can make that the municipal parking lot and stay out of the you own a municipal parking lot now that's underutilized. You're putting charging stations there. There's minor drainage problems because you've used the ice skating rink as a parking area. It's flat, it has a puddle. Next time the town paves, if you just shimmed it so the water drain off, you'd be fine. That's all it's going to take. You're going to, with the coming of cars, electric cars, you're going to add more charging stations. You have everything that's there to do it. And when you look at that space too, okay, you still have the old electrical service for the ice skating rink, the poles, the halogen lights. It's not big money to just clean that up a little bit. Take down the old poles, take down the old lights, pull out the old electrical service, finish a project, and it looks short. Now, you look at the thing and you can say, well, if you have money and you think about it, yes, you could build out that lot. To have a walking path that went down through the river there, that'd be great. But it's all in the money that you can have. The thing about looking at it as a drainage thing with the church is when you say you're going to improve drainage and with the money that's coming from the state, you might be able to get the state money to do the hard part of it, and then the path is not really a problem. It has to be on a pretty good gravel base, because when you look at that corner, there's only the one catch basin that's out in front of there, but all those properties look like the water goes right out behind the church. Yeah, you're nodding your head, Jeff, so you've probably seen it before. Yeah, right. So,
And I think it's a great project. When we did the master plan, this was brought up.
Yeah.
And, but not in a tremendous amount of depth. But
Yeah.
I do remember the discussion.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely, and yes, kids walk back and forth. Me and my kids have back and forth from softball games and soccer games when they were little. What I'm wondering, and what I put in your guys' memo is, if it's something that you're interested in, if you would, let me work with Peter, we'll get Kirby down there, we'll get Matt, the rec director, down there, and start some conversations about what's involved to really put it on the ground. Because I definitely think it is a worthwhile project. We're talking about economic development, we're talking about building the downtown, walkable community, on and on and on. So I think it's an easy solution.
If you move that storage shed
Correct.
closer to the field, then you can organize the parking spots a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. And Matt just needs to be part of the conversation,
Right.
obviously.
Well, and
Kirby.
part of the thing that, the parking lot thing gets kind of scary, because now you start making impervious area. Now, when you clean up that, or is the state going to say you're going to have a detention pond? So it's kind of, you got to figure out the balance where you can do it without getting sucked down the rabbit hole, so to speak, in money.
Well, that parking lot's been there a very long time. There's never been a drainage issue.
Oh, right, but if somebody but see, when you pave it.
I know, I get it.
Yeah, you get it, yeah, there you go.
So I think it's a great idea as well. The one question I have is that if I were a business owner on that had my property back up against what's the town property there,
Yep.
will I be allowed to put up a sign that says, "Come to my store"? Or is that going to be something that we already have a sign in front, and therefore the zoning regulations prohibit additional signage? Because to me, that would be a big selling point.
Yep.
Somebody parks and it's like, oh, I want to go to the quilt shop, but I have no idea which one of these buildings it is.
I think may I speak for a moment?
Yeah, go, Lee. Go ahead.
I also think too, though, obviously, have you had permission from the Mediterranean and the quilt shop to have a path walking through their property? To the green?
Yeah, you got it.
No, go ahead.
Okay. If you look at that property there, if you can look, Lee's looked at the map, and it's, that they got together and had a parking association was actually a pretty clever idea, because there's, the drugstore owns the two-car garage that's back there, but it doesn't own any land to get to it. It's been broken up over years, and that whole is kind of a confused area. That's why the church area actually gets you out of trying to fool with a lot of property owners. Although the people that own Mediterranean were talking, It's,
Hold on.
it's on.
Yeah, hold on, Pete.
Yeah, Lee can see it. Let me look.
Actually, my computer's.
Recording in progress.
I think we had an EMP or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Now they're gone.
Because I have no.
Are you,
They're gone.
can you hear us, Lee and Heather?
Oh, now we can hear you, Arnie.
Yeah. Yep.
I think,
But it just cut out with Peter talking about access, I think.
Right.
so the Main Street Parking Association, who owns that land?
It's owned by multiple people, believe it or not. When you look at that lot, it's a gravel lot that's owned by, I think, at least 3 people. Mediterranean owns the lot, but they don't own a path to get to it. You really should look at the map. It's pretty, it's old time, broken stuff up. Yeah, but I don't think we can show that on the web.
So who would the conversations be with about this path? I mean, the path is on your property?
The easy path is you have a drainage right-of-way that goes through the church property. Behind the church property right now, it ends at the back of the building. So you're taking the water from the main street and dumping it in the back of the church. So you actually have an implied drainage right-of-way. And what you need to do is actually say, we would like to fix this and continue the drainage on. Can we have a walkway over it? And if I was a church and said, I get a backyard for you having a walkway that's not flooded, it would probably be pretty easy to sell. And then you're dealing with one property owner. And you're not trying to have people walk through a parking lot. That would be option number 1. Option number 2 is multiple property owners as you try to get across what is the Main Street Parking Association.
Well, I agree with everyone else that it sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I think the issue is going to be some of the details that would have to be worked out, but it's definitely well worth trying to accomplish this. It's a great idea.
Arnie, can I join in, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Bear.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a little surprised at Peter's presentation. I don't. So I was part of this was partly my idea because when we were talking about zoning in that area and people parking, the residents parking on the street. It came up that we have that lot in the back, and then it was also brought up that lot has EV charging stations on it. So from my perspective, compared to where this is being taken from Peter, we made a little bit of a leap. I think that, and I can't speak for other members of the board, but I think that what my initial concern or ask was more for like a parking sign on Route 11, and then make that parking in the back more noticeable and accessible to our visitors and guests, and also encouraging people that own properties and renters to park back there too. So they've taken it a little bit further than what I think we discussed as a board, and making it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be right now. But we do have that parking lot that's being used as an EV, and so I think that the primary concern for me as a board member was to get that more use now quickly, and encourage some of the people with tenants and stuff to be able to park there if it's not filled up with cars that are charging, and then relieve a little bit of the parking that is there now, so that we can have more parking for businesses. But I do appreciate Peter's vision, in more long-term too, with a path and so forth and so on, but obviously that's going to take some time.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff came up that, of course, there's going to be a lot of work to get sort out all the details and how it's all going to work and stuff. But at this point, it sounds like they're just looking for our approval to get Julie to get involved with it and to start having conversations regarding that area and to see what we could do to accomplish this. I'm sure there's going to be some things along the way that we're going to have to deal with, but basically, we have to agree to head in that direction.
You want me to start working on it? Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, thank you. Julie, I'd just like a tour maybe of the site and the visual to see it at some point. And also I'd like to just make sure that we get community involvement and opinion, and especially from the property owners. Thank you. But it is a good idea, and thanks for your work on this.
So something like this wouldn't happen.
I echo Heather's comments.
Springtime anyways, I would think, no?
I mean, I think we can start the conversations, and we could start the conversations with the property
Yeah,
owners.
before anything happens. yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, to really see what we've got, and get Kirby in the loop, get Matt in the loop, property owners in the loop.
Especially in the springtime, you'll be able to figure out the
Absolutely.
drainage a lot
Perfect time
better.
to see the drainage issue, yeah. Yeah.
And it would be really fun to view it, right? To just walk it. Maybe not with the snow, but soon. That would be nice.
Yep, absolutely.
Would work out really well. It would save, having a path through there would be extremely helpful instead of walking on the road, because you're going to come out right at the green and avoid the traffic of Main Street, and it's a nice short walk, and it's a lot closer that way. Any other questions or concerns or comments?
Linda Dyack has her hand up.
Linda Dyack? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that a path from the parking area up is, I guess, a good idea for people who are using it for their sporting events and that. But honestly, I don't foresee, unless there's an event, people using that lot if they are visiting the green or any of the businesses on the green. Having a house that's right on Main Street there, and it's at the, it's off. We're just beyond in Victoria, and people will do anything to save 4 feet of walking. They block our driveway on a regular basis. They park halfway in the driveway, halfway out. I can't imagine that these people are going to drive around the corner and park and walk up. So my concern isn't a path, which is great, or fixing your drainage, which obviously you probably should do. My concern would be how much we invest in a parking lot that will see use for sporting events, which it already does. And it's not going to get used. Somebody that lives above one of the buildings on the green isn't going to walk all the way down and around to get to their car. They're just not going to, people aren't going to do that. That's my concern.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for those comments.
Yep. Barry's got his hand.
Yep.
Preston?
I will just say that we did talk about coupling this with a parking ordinance that says if you are a resident, you can't park in the public, on the green. So, but that's another thing that the select board have to consider.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and it's part of the whole downtown plan and the master plan that we had, and it was been discussed before, and there's a lot of work involved to get to.
I think if you get an attractive path and some signage, I think it'll get used a lot more than you think.
Well, I think the other issue is that you're encouraging employees of businesses on the green to park there, not the customers.
Exactly. Which is all part of a plan to get more businesses into town. And with the parking available like that, it would just help. Because when everything was working and there was more restaurants open and there was more things going on, it got dicey sometimes to get parking up there in the front on a busy Friday or Saturday night. So having that option in the back, I think, would only help.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think the word encouraging is really a good word, because if you have, people that are working in the restaurants and people that are tenants, and they're encouraged to do this, and they have buy-in in the community, and they're the ones that know that the parking is back there, not someone that's just coming into our town for dinner, then there's an open spot for someone to come into our town for dinner, and then everything just functions better. And that was the basic premise of the whole thing to begin with. Get our people that are renting and our employees off of the streets like they do in a lot of places, have a place for them to park, and have it be lit up and safe, and encourage them to utilize it. So that's the core.
All right, thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
All right, so Monday night, I'm going to go over the data that I did for the parking study. Shows all the pieces, parts to show you what's there and what's happening. And then from there, you'll see some pretty obvious recommendations. If I'm going to do it for the Development Review Board, and I think it's easier if I just do it once and then we can present it and you can ask a lot of questions. If I filled you up with data, it would probably kill you. To give you ideas to see where we might go. You know, we can certainly hear what their ideas are going to be coming back to there before we come for you again. But you're welcome to come Monday night and we can go through the data. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we put the packet for the DRB online, so there will be maps and things like that that will help you understand this. So you can sit at home
Kathy.
and listen.
Thank you.
I mean, it sounds like, Julie, you're
I
going to
think
be...
I've got my consensus.
Yeah,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
I mean, we could stay involved with it if we're interested in seeing what's going
And I
on
can
with the
keep you
zoning and
updated on
everything else.
on the
Sure.
old business, and I'll work with the
So
planning commission.
It'll be a
and
while
the rest.
before it comes before
It's
the
gonna be
board
a bit,
again.
yep.
To
Lot to
work
work
out
through.
all the details, but
We'll come back with a plan.
I'd like to thank the planning commission for being here and giving us
Yes,
all
thank
that
you.
information and coming up with a excellent idea.
Absolutely.
It'd be nice to see all those parking lots full.
Yes, it would be.
Next item on our agenda is to adopt our general fund budget and capital plan. And that's it, we lost all the audience now.
Audience is fine.
Budget's so important. Don't even want to hear it.
Well,
Okay,
that tells me they trust us.
I guess they're fine with the increase, right?
They better.
Have a sip of water. Hasn't been many changes since the last
There
reiteration of this budget?
hasn't. A few lines, I've just, lines that I had really tight. I gave a little bit of room to. The big change is increasing, or adding a line for the audit assessment of the police department, putting some money in for that. I would like to get started on that. So with all of that, the general fund budget shows an increase, in the amount of little over 77,000, which is just under 2 cents based on the 2021 grand list. The 2022 grand list should be higher. It's anticipated that grand list will be higher, so that number may change slightly, but it's just under 2%.
So if the grand list
Or 2
goes
cents.
higher, that percentage
That number
would go
goes
down?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So, and then, and to tell you to update you on how 2021 ended, after all final revenue and expenses are in, the deficit landed at 142, which is not too bad,
Not bad at all.
given that most of that would have been the public safety building.
Well, it was 140 from the public safety.
Correct. So, not too bad. Yeah.
Where does our fund balance end up, Julie?
That will end our fund balance.
I mean, it started
That will
at-
end our fund balance at 443,693, unaudited. 2021's got to be audited still, but
The recommended fund balance by our auditors was, what, 500,000?
it was right around 500.
So we were at 585, the minus 142, we're at 443, so we're still fluctuating in that area, which is helpful.
Yep. Yep. Yep, so I'm pleased with the way it ended, but
The assessment on that increase of .019, which is just under 2%, you had it in our notes there that it was a difference of $19 per $100,000 of assessment. So if you had a $200,000 house,
you're up
you're
40
at,
bucks.
38.
yeah,
$38.
So it's actually a relatively, and I realize people are on fixed incomes and people are always watching their budgets, and it's hard to make a living sometimes. I still think we're doing Julie and the town is doing an excellent job to keep our finances down and to keep our budgets down as much as we can and still provide the services that people are expecting and actually wanting more of as we go forward in the future.
And I think the services have been more in demand, especially the last couple of years. I mean, we went from like 75 empty houses in town to just about 0. The last couple that are...
There was how many houses?
I was told by a real estate agent,
Yeah.
that at one point, there was 75 empty houses in town.
Chester.
And right now, it's like down to 2, but they're under contract.
Wow.
And the houses are moving as quick as they come on the market, so.
That's a great sign.
That's a lot more.
Great sign unless you're trying to buy a house.
Right. True. It's not bad if you're selling it.
And sometimes when the market gets like that, the prices of houses start going up. And then you got to worry about people that live in this town being able to afford to stay in this town.
Right.
So it's like a catch-22.
That's exactly what's happening.
That it's happening, but it also has ramifications in other
Oh,
ways.
absolutely.
And I will say, I noticed it this last cold snap. With all the empty houses, I would have 4 or 5 houses freeze up, and I haven't got any calls. I don't know how many you got, Arnie, but
Chasing them.
yeah, but I mean,
Well, a lot of them are
they're occupied.
new homeowners that aren't familiar with winters in Vermont. So, you know, they're getting a hard lesson, but they're learning. Anybody have any questions or concerns on the budget?
So as usual, Julie, you've done a phenomenal job. There's some things we can't control, but you've made it all work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Yep.
And want to go right on to the capital plan?
Sure. So the capital plan, not a lot of change here. Both dump trucks have been added, both at 4 years. And the cruiser is 4 years. Those are the only 3 adds to the capital plan as far as purchasing. And then for the bond program, it would be doing 1 bond. That would be used, $280,000 this year. That would pave the town garage lot, Wheeler Road and Flamstead, and would be the additional money that we needed for the Popple Dungeon Bridge that we talked about, and would be the match for that last section of Route 35. We could finally get that 1,200 feet done. That would be in that $280,000 bond.
That Wheeler Road?
Wheeler Road, there's one section, that small section of Wheeler Road. It's a tiny section.
Is that off of Lover's Lane?
I believe so.
But part of that is paved?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it always
Yeah.
has been.
Yep.
Up
it
that
is.
hill.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've been up that hill numerous times.
Yeah.
Never realized there was pavement underneath any part of it.
I've been up it and down it backwards in a dump truck.
Well, I could easily see how that could happen. That's not an easy road.
Well, and in 2023, we will be eligible again for the 2-for-1 paving money from the state, and that would be used to do the Andover Road, that section of Andover Road that's ours. Kirby and I are talking about a few things with that. That paving project would also include replacing all the culverts underneath Andover Road. They're all deteriorating. And that grant will allow us to replace culverts. And we've talked also a little bit about the potential of adding a paved walking path on one side of Andover Road. And then it's a true state walking path. So for those who had concerns about walking on Andover Road, it would give those paved lanes and would be safer. So we're going to pull some numbers together for 2023 on that.
I think the width of the base is definitely wide enough to allow that.
Yes, yeah, we would just be paving a little more than normal. And with the infrastructure bill that was passed in Congress, huge dollars of that are coming to Vermont specific to transportation. And one of the avenues so far, they haven't made their final decision, is to dump a lot of money, or dump a majority of this money into grant programs that are already in place. So upping the limits on the paving grant, upping the limits on the large structures grants, which would be good for a project like this. Our limits would be higher. So we'll keep our eyes open for that.
Does that have any impact on the bridge replacements over off of Route 103?
So Arnie and I met, was it last week? Last week.
Yeah, it was last week.
With the engineer in the state. They're getting things together, finalizing preliminary engineering. It talked about alignment, where things are going, that whole piece. They are going to do, they got a couple more things to do, and they're going to come update the board on where that project is at. Currently, it is slated to go out to bid in 2024 with construction in 2025. Okay. My guess is, yes, they're probably using that infrastructure money to help fund some of that. We have talked to them about if there's any opportunity to accelerate. I didn't get the vibe that there was an option really to accelerate construction, but they are going to have their structure. Kirby has concerns about Jewett Bridge holding up for another 3 or 4 years. So we have their structural engineers are going to go take a look at Jewett Bridge and give us an opinion about what we can do to get that so it'll last, until this project goes to construction. But because of the program that they're using on this, our match is only going to have to be 2.5%, which is great. And 2.5% of what? I don't know. They're supposed to be getting me that number.
Part of the concern that they had was acquiring the land and the right-of-ways,
Yeah.
and the legal part of it. If
There's-
it goes smooth,
Yeah,
that there's a chance that it might be accelerated and be a little earlier, but they're not planning on it going smooth because of some of the feedback and kickback that we've already had just to get this far in the project. But, some of the properties have changed hands, so it might be that the case is that it does go a lot smoother than they think, and they realize the concerns that we have, that we do not want to spend any more money on any of those bridges, knowing that this one's coming forward. It's just money thrown out if you have to repair things that are going to be dismantled and taken down. Kirby did state that some of the stuff on some of the bridges would be able to be reused, taking it apart and saving it and putting it aside. Yeah. But it's still man hours, it's still time, it's still money to do anything other than having a brand-new bridge in place and just going with it. And they changed the location of the road from the west side of that tree line to the east side. I think that was the only other big change that happened on it and stuff. But they're excited about the project because of the way the bridge itself is built and the process to get there and do what's going on, because it involves so much right-of-ways and easements for electricity, all the other utility easements and things like that, and the access to 103 too. And that's going to be a huge benefit to everybody that lives over there. Yeah. As far as safety goes, as far as access goes, and as far as everything goes, as far as the roads and things. But they've got a lot of work to do.
Well, and Kirby's just happy that we're going to getting their structural engineers to look at Jewett, because that's usually the challenge, is getting a structural engineer to give you an opinion, and it costs so much. So their engineers are going to give us an opinion on Jewett Bridge. So
that bridge don't have a lot of traffic, but probably 50% of it's heavy traffic.
Exactly. Yeah,
So-
our own trucks included. So,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
That's quite a carryover on the bond and capital plan.
Yep.
From last year.
Yep. Well, and the reason that carryover is 491 is because we didn't spend the 200,000 on the Depot Street sidewalk.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm looking at it saying,
Yeah.
wow, that's
However, you still have a good
No, it's
fund
still-
balance in the
yeah.
capital plan.
Oh, even minus the 200, yeah.
Exactly. You've got a pretty healthy fund balance, which is,
Yep.
hopefully we can hold that, and that will be very beneficial come 2024.
Get over the hump.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that, we're looking to purchase an ambulance next year. And yes, some of your ARPA money can be used for that, but you may not want to use all your ARPA money for that. I'll have an estimated cost. Obviously, we haven't gone out to bid yet, but Amanda has been speaking with a couple of companies, getting some preliminary costs right now. Formal bid process will begin, sometime soon, but it'll give us an idea of what we're looking at for a number.
Are there many companies that do that?
I think there's 2 or 3. She was able to find 2 or 3. She wanted to, I asked her to try to find 3 if she could. It's not so easy.
That's the
but-
worrisome part, that there are only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It probably used to be that
I mean, you
there
could go
were a lot
further
more.
out, but
Yeah.
we'd rather go with somebody that we can have easy access to if we
Yeah.
have issues, so.
Yeah. That'll be something in the future to deal with.
Yep, exactly.
Anybody-
So having that fund balance will be helpful in many ways, yep, going forward.
Anybody have any questions, comments on the budget or the capital bond plan? You did a great job, Julie. I know towards the end of the year, it was looking a little sketchy there for a while on where we were going to sit, but to come out only with a $142,000 deficit after the year that we had, with a lot of the expenses that were incurred that we had no idea were happening.
Yep. Well, and hopefully that'll subside in I tried to give us a little bit of cushion so that we don't,
But you never know what's going to come
you
up.
just don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully I've given us enough cushion. But not too much. It's that balancing line, But anyway.
So we need a motion on this?
You need a motion to set your budget at 3420,03044. Bottom line on page 9.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Lee Dakin's the motion, Lee Gustafson's the second, that we set the town budget at $3,420,030.44.
That is
that
it.
the right number?
That, you got it.
Any further discussion on it? All those in favor of approving the budget as stated, please say aye.
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 The motion passes. Another year done with the finances for a while.
Woo-hoo!
Someone's happy about that.
I'm very happy about that.
Now we can pile on other work.
Yeah, it's already there. It's already there.
So everybody take out their lists when we get to new business and new agenda items.
I'll take out mine.
The budget's gone. Hopefully, the townspeople realize all the hard work that's gone into this, and they approve it. And I think they're usually pretty good about our budgets when
Yeah.
it comes to the town. They realize that we're extremely frugal, and we're careful about where the money is spent, and how we spend it, and what goes forward.
And we're
from there.
transparent about it. We're transparent about it.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the best part.
Yep.
It was interesting that they all left right when we were going to talk money.
Tells me it's a vote of confidence.
That's right.
That's right.
I believe that. I think so. I don't know. And it's all there. We go over it for months towards the end of the year, and we look at it, pretty close. And Julie, you do a great job with it.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is to adopt our town meeting warning. I'm not going to read it all.
No, the only change here is that, okay, wait a minute. Oh, shoot. You know what? There is a change. Although you can sign the second page and I can change the first one if you're comfortable with that. I forgot to, on Article 3, yep, that budget number needs to change.
What's it going to be?
It will be what you just voted, 3420,03044.
No.
Yep. Yep. It's actually down from what I put in there.
Let me write it down.
I did, it's on mine. Yeah, if you can. That is the only change, that's not true. The other change was I had told you I would move that opening paragraph to be the hybrid informational meeting. Everything voted by Australian ballot. The governor did sign that. So the opening paragraph changed. So that changed, and the number changed. But the signature page is on the second. It's up to you what you guys want to do.
As far as what?
You could go ahead and sign and I'll just make that change tonight, or you can just stop in tomorrow, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
I'll stop in tomorrow.
Okay.
So will I, Julie, but I was looking for this draft warning that I had in my packet. What was the change you made? Just the money, the budget?
On Article 3, that budget number needs to change. And
Okay.
on the opening paragraph, Lee, I changed it to the hybrid informational meeting and all articles being voted Australian ballot.
Good.
Like we did last year.
Good.
The governor signed that change into law, so you guys had indicated you wanted to do that if he had signed it. So.
I wonder if that's going to be something that they're going to be doing every year.
I don't know. They'd have to make a permanent change.
I wouldn't like to see that.
Several laws would have to change.
I think the town meeting is an important part of our process, and doing it hybrid, I think, makes sense for this year, as it did for last year, but beyond this, I'm not seeing it as something we should make permanent.
I mean, we vote on the big ticket items by Australian ballot anyways, but it is nice to have the discussions regarding all the other articles on the floor with people here.
It's a great tradition, and I agree with Lee that when we could get back to it, I'm all for it.
So we need a motion to approve the town warning with the two corrections mentioned.
So moved.
So moved.
Heather's the motion. Lee Gustafson's the second. Any further discussion on it? So basically, it's the same warning that we read last meeting, with the first paragraph being a little different to incorporate the electronic part of it and voting on all the articles by Australian ballot on March 1st. And the number, which is $3,420,030.44. All those in favor of approving the town of Chester warning, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Do you three want to sign it now?
Sure. You guys might as
Yeah,
well.
that's fine.
I had to get up and stretch anyways, Jack. Legs don't move as good.
What's happening?
We're signing the.
We're signing the warning. The town.
I'll come in tomorrow, Arnie, and sign this stuff.
Sure, that's fine, Heather. Yep.
I just was wondering if everyone was leaving.
Everyone left a couple of articles ago. A couple of.
No, but Julie got up and you're getting up and I'm going, what's going on here?
I got up to stretch my legs.
That's fine.
And yeah. It's like a little 2-minute break.
Here was a question I had when I was going through this packet, is this resolution certificate. Didn't quite understand it.
So those are for your bond articles?
Okay, now I understand it better, thank
Those
you.
are all the standard forms you do every year when we do a bond.
Okay,
And this is for the paving bond?
This is for that paving bond, that 280,000?
So we have to do each one of these by themselves, right?
Yeah, the resolution, the deck of intent, and the ballot you need to approve.
So what's the third one?
The ballot?
Oh,
You just have to approve the ballot. You don't have to sign anything on it.
So this one we just approved, these two get motions?
All three got motions.
All three get motions. So we need a motion to accept the resolution certificate dated January 19, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Heather's the motion, Lee Gustafson's the second. And this is for the bond that's in the amount of $280,000. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the resolution certificate for the bond, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? No. Is there a sign?
You don't. The town clerk signs all these after you approve them. Yeah.
And we need a motion to accept the declaration of official intent of the town of Chester to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of indebtedness.
I'll change that.
So basically, it's to approve the declaration regarding this bond. Somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
What was that, you, Lee, that made the motion?
Yeah.
Lee made the motion and Jeff's the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the declaration, please say aye.
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 And the last thing is to approve the official ballot for the town of Chester regarding this bond. Somebody make a motion to approve this ballot?
So moved.
So moved.
So Lee's the motion and Lee Dakins the second on it. And all these three different articles are all regarding that same bond for that $280,000 basically for paving. All those in favor of approving the official ballot, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Nope. So that paperwork, that housekeeping is taken care of. And we have our next item on our agenda is the contract with Andover. I think there was a couple of changes that you incorporated on this, Julie? or-
Yep, there was a couple of changes. The first one was Heather's request. I can't remember where it was. It was item 1.
Item 1, okay.
No, wait a minute. No, it wasn't. No, I'm sorry. It was item 5. Sorry. Item 5. After the formulas, it's that last paragraph under item 5. The town of Chester reserves the right to review the use of this formula each year. It's that paragraph was added.
Good.
And then Lee Gustafson.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I think that's
You're
great.
welcome. And then Lee Gustafson had asked me to break down that operational cost formula so it was a little clearer.
Thank you.
And those were the only.
That's the last page, right?
Yeah, that was on the same page, number 5, Lee.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
The formula for operational costs.
Okay.
And there were a couple typos I found, but that was it. Or maybe it was Lee found them. I don't remember. Somebody.
Do you want a motion, Arnie?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you want me to do that now?
sure, if you like.
I make a motion to accept the contract for services relating to the fire suppression and ambulance for Andover that Julie has presented.
So Heather's the
I
motion
second it.
and Lee Dakins the second. Any further discussion on it?
Thank you for those changes
You're welcome.
again.
It'll be nice to have a document in place that's there for us every year. Because we did spend, a reasonable amount of time, and especially in the office, to prepare this and get it ready. They'll know what's going on in the future, and we will also know what the income's going to be in the future, too. So it's
Exactly.
going to help both towns in the long run. All those in favor of approving the contract for services for fire suppression and ambulance between the town of Chester and the town of Andover, please say aye.
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 And there's nobody to oppose.
Certificate.
Oh, it's the last one, huh?
Yeah.
And this is just a general,
This is the standard form you do
Yeah.
every year.
yeah. So we need a motion to approve the certificate, no appeal or suit pendings for the town of Chester.
Correct.
So moved.
Heather's the motion.
I didn't understand what that meant.
It's,
So this is a form that the listers are required by law to file every year, that is stating that at the time that they are lodging the grand list, there is no tax appeals currently pending.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll second it.
And so are will the one that we're signing, or the listers, will all the listers sign?
We have two listers, they've both
Oh, we only
signed,
have two.
and then the
Okay.
town clerk signs, once you approve it.
Oh, town clerk. Okay, perfect. Good.
So who made the motion? Was that you, Heather?
I did.
And who seconded it? And Lee Gustafson, second. Any further discussion on it? All those in favor of approving the certificate of no appeal or suit pending, please say aye.
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 That's
I
just
got
a
it, I got
copy,
the
huh?
original. Yep.
A lot of housekeeping.
Yep.
Next agenda item is new business and future agenda items, now that the budget's done.
Phew.
I can't get my list out, my computer died, so.
Good.
Just closed.
It can stay there. So,
You had a list, Lee?
Yeah, long list.
so I was thinking that February 2nd, I would try to have the information together for the Vermont Forestry Foundation land.
Sure.
You could
Oh,
begin
good.
that discussion. And then on the 16th, hopefully I would hear back from Jim about the solar farm stuff. And maybe start your discussion, your community forum on the ARPA funding. Now that the final rule has been set by Treasury, and we know that we can use it for anything that's general government operations, the whole 900,000, that's a game changer as far as potential uses for the property. So I'll be meeting with department heads, fine tuning priority, what they are feeling are, maybe one or two priority projects for their departments, and then bring it to the community, see what the community feels about, what they feel are priority projects, and start some discussion about how that money would be able to be used. Again, emphasizing that there is no rush to use it. I think it's wise to take a step back and see what surfaces over the next couple of years. But at least we have some ideas going.
Is there a deadline that it has to be used
So we
by?
have to obligate funds by the end of 2024. But you don't have to spend the funds until the end of 2026.
But by 2024, you have
You
to
have
say
to know
where you're going to be
Correct.
spending it.
Yep, you got to know where it's going.
And do we
Okay.
have the money in the bank?
We have half of it. We have about 450.
So we can plan on spending 450,000.
Correct. We'll have the other 450 probably in May this year.
It's a good
Not
point.
holding it.
I'm with the state. If it's in the bank, then. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm hearing, I wanted to put that on the agenda, so that was really great that you said that, Julie. But I hear ambulance, hear bike path, I hear this. I think we could easily be well over the 900,000.
Absolutely.
So it would be really good to have some, really clear planning around it, because I'm not sure, I think this is once in a lifetime opportunity. So that's the other thing, is how are we going to spend it really wisely so that it takes Chester into the future in a better manner?
Well, and that's why I'm saying, there's no hurry. We have time. It's okay to take a step back and really think about what is the best way to use this money, not, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that, spend. The list I have from department heads is already 4 times that. So it's,
Right.
So, yeah. Take a step back.
Thank you.
And think about it. Yep.
I agree with you. And I agree with you, Heather, that it's because it's a one-time, money thing, that to use it wisely, something that'll affect the future, not just buy an item that's going to depreciate or whatever, but hopefully do something that's helpful.
Well, and I'm thinking one time, one-time purchases, not offsetting something that is operational.
Yeah.
maybe your biggest bang for your buck. But there's also grant programs coming out, so how can we use this money to leverage other money? And
So have it be the one-time match.
Yeah.
For certain things versus sending that to the voters, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Well, thank you. And maybe when we do present it, have an explanation of exactly what it is and how we got here. Because I think I know, but I think the voters would like to know too.
Sure.
Sure. Anybody else have any ideas for, or any requests for future agenda items? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Don't go nowhere. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 So now we could start our wastewater commissioners meeting. And the first item on the agenda is the water department budget. Has anything changed on this, Julie, since the last time you showed it?
Not really. The 2021 actuals have been updated. You know, so, but for the budget part, few numbers were put in, you know, the breakdown of workers' comp, medical insurance, you know, those types of expenses that we didn't know back when you first looked at this have been updated, but there are no major changes.
So Jeff, you put on your different hat, you took off your
Yeah,
select board
I recused
hat.
myself from the board so I can speak as the water superintendent.
So how's
I like the fonts.
it's getting bigger?
Big print. I put it in big print.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm thanking you as well.
This one's a little easier to do that with.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, as far as the water department goes, we're still pushing forward for trying to update the well, trying to do figure out how we're going to do redundancy, which is kind of goes along with the businesses. You know, we've got to have a good, solid water supply in order to support businesses. So it's.
When was the last time it was updated?
What's that?
When was the last time it was updated?
The water department. We're
Well, you
still
said
working.
the well.
Working with the state and the engineers, trying to figure out what we can do. The wells, what was it, 3 years ago, I think it was serviced, and, you know, and checked and everything, but.
Okay.
I mean, we need to make sure that we have redundancy, and we're not being allowed to do that right now.
Yeah, that's what Hoffer, we've hired Naomi, we've contracted with Naomi, who is also working with Hoffer Consulting to do a full analysis of Canal Street, as well as Jeffrey. That gives us what we need to go back to the state, hopefully answering their questions. Scott Stewart, right?
Yes.
To answer Scott's questions about, he had some questions, you know, before they're going to, you know, give a thumbs up. So Hoffer's report is hopefully going to be able to accomplish that.
And we got that report.
We got that report. Naomi's got her end that she is finalizing.
Yep.
And then the package should be hopefully get us the answers we need.
Yeah, basically whether we're gonna drill another well or put one next door, right, you know, in the same
In
building.
the same
or whatever.
aquifer, the same area.
And we need to get a generator up there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when I looked over that report, it seemed like that's where it was going.
Yeah.
That it was kind of either that or purchasing more property or somewhere else and trying to get that kind of a yield from a well. I don't see that happening, but.
No.
So Jeff, what are we allowed to pull out of the aquifer at this point? How much can we legally pump on a daily basis?
You know, I don't know if there's a legal limit, because we do get taxed on every gallon of water we take out of the ground, you know. We have to pay the state. It's only like I can't remember what it is now. Is it 4.5 cents a thousand or something?
Yeah.
So every 3 months. I
We
send-
pay the state to take water out of our aquifer?
Yes.
Yeah,
What
It's
is
the waters of the state. We don't own it.
right.
Just like rivers, yeah,
the state owns it?
the state owns it, yeah. State owns all the resources in the boundary of Vermont. We
That's
own
why it
nothing.
behooves the town to work with businesses like Drew's in their cooling tunnel where they're using potable water
Right.
to cool their jars. No, you don't want to be doing that. Not only is it a huge bill for them, but we're paying based
Right.
on water that's just being wasted, so.
Yeah, they're wasting like 20 to 30,000 gallons a day
A day
when they're
to
running
cool
the
their
cooling
jars.
tunnel. So, you know, they've got the chillers down there. It's gonna be like the end of March before they can do the process of removing that from the system, so.
Not to mention the cost of,
So that
The
well,
discharge
the Jeffrey well, I thought, I read somewhere that it was approved for 450 gallons, but we only take, what, 350 or 400?
Yeah, I mean, I got a 75 horse motor up there that I could turn up, and I could get a lot more initially. But what that does is it stresses the veins in the ground and pulls the sediment into the water, you know. So eventually it's gonna damage the well. That's why I keep it at it's like 350 right now gallons, but it only runs like 9 hours a day, you know. So, and we break it up so it doesn't just run all at one whack, you know, so.
As soon as you dewater those pores, they collapse on each other.
Yeah.
And you can't, other than doing something that requires an enormous amount of energy, you can't re-expand
Open it
that.
up,
So,
yeah.
so that's why it's important that we understand, and I think Jeff's doing a great job, understand what we can pull out of that without causing future
Even though it
problems.
might be rated for a lot more and there's
Right.
more there.
Right.
We're just being smart about how we take the water out of it.
Right, yep. Because when I first took over, we had to do the whole, we had to flush everything out. And what they do is they take the pump, out of service, they put this big, it's like I don't know what it is, but it pumps down in and it shoves the water in and out. And they put,
It's a big piston, basically.
yeah, and I can't remember what they use to break up the chemicals.
Like a giant plunger.
Yeah, and then they flush it out, and they do it 2 or 3 times, and then they chlorinate it, and they run it till the chlorine's out of it, and then you're back in service, but it opens up all those veins and stuff. But it was being stressed. It was running, at that time, it was running like 430 gallons a minute, you know, and just, it was running more, so. I turned it down, and I haven't had to have that done again. So our flows are still up there, so. On the sewer end, I just went up and got my volute for my second pump in the main pump station today. And I don't know if I'll get it in before the end of the week or not, but been running that 4 months with only one pump, and I've, been rolling the dice, but you can't. I spent 5 months waiting to get a volute for that side, and they sent me the wrong one. So I ended up taking the old one out, and I took it up and I had them rehab it, which they sandblasted it. They put another layer of stuff in there, and then they put 2 layers of ceramic paint in there.
Wow.
And hopefully that'll hold up. That'll get us going with the second pump, but I still need to get one for something for that side, because that volute's over 40 years old. It's done its job, but just not having. I feel nervous only having one pump running down there, but that's part of it. But the other thing is, recently Julie and I have been talking about, we need to get more information on what kind of upgrades we need to do at the plant to support more businesses in the town. More different kinds of businesses. And that's why we need to get a handle on that in our town plan thing, so to get that going.
my plan on that, just while you're there, Jeff, is probably the end of '22, maybe beginning of '23. Start talking about, I think, taking more of a planned approach. What kind of businesses do we want to attract in Chester? Start there. Don't start with our limitations. money is starting to filter through the state. Again, drinking water, wastewater, they're getting a lot of money. So it'd be great to utilize some of that money for the engineered plans for the upgrade. So the end of the year, kind of start talking, having a planning process of what we'd like to see.
Yeah. Are there any places that make sense for extending our sewer lines or water lines for that matter too?
You know, I've looked at it in the past, but you know, I can't tell you off the top of my head right now, but I've been too worried about getting redundancy and a few other things, but
I was just wondering because of the conversation regarding the zoning with Bob Louise
Absolutely.
and stuff.
Yep.
Because Bob Louise is not hooked on to town sewer, is it?
yeah, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
But is that the last one?
Yes.
Oh.
This manhole about 200 feet south of, no, east of there. And if I don't know if you remember when we had a problem with grease that backed up in that line up there and it went into a certain residence up there and we ended up paying money to, you know, fix the damage that was done from the backup. But that blockage was caused by grease. And we're finding we've always had that problem, but with a lot of the new people moving into town, they don't understand, and we're getting more and more grease issues. They're doing certain things, and we get a problem on First Avenue pump station. We never had a problem there before, and now it's, you know, we're trying to keep ahead of it, but it's starting to catch up to it.
In the February bills when they go out again would be.
Yeah.
I think it hits a few of them, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's I can identify some of them, but not all of them, of course. But
I remember we had ways of monitoring that when it was specific to a location.
right, we have to put a sampler in manholes. That'll only narrow
And it had to
down.
be specific to the one business or one whatever. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to tell anyways.
Yeah.
One of the concerns that I had that, I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but it relates to what we're talking about now is the state, in the discussion we had about cannabis, marijuana, the state doesn't allow us to regulate any agriculture like growing.
Right.
But marijuana growing is a highly pesticide-heavy process. There's a lot of pesticides, yes. There's a lot of fertilizers, a lot of pesticides, there's a lot of herbicides. It's a highly energy-intensive process. And the concern that I have is if we have no say into where somebody can set up a pot farm, if they set one up gradient from where the Jeffrey well is, and all of a sudden we got these pesticides that are hitting the aquifer, that's going to be a problem.
Well, and I do know that one thing that Gwen said, and I haven't really looked into it a lot, is that one of the 5 rules that they put in, where we do have say, is if you have a municipal wastewater system, that does give us some input if there is a grower, I believe.
And hopefully
That's one of the
municipal
5s.
water
Well,
system.
we definitely need it. We're on the cusp of violating because of some of the stuff we've been getting. You got to remember when that was put in, that was designed for residential waste processes only. It wasn't designed for industrial in waste, like high or low pHs or high or low BODs, and the chemicals that come with some of these businesses, you know. So this is our problem.
Well, and that, it goes both ways, because you got the water supply issue and then the wastewater issue. So I know, having been in the industry for a long time, I know that there are some contaminants that hit water and they travel faster than the water supply does. You know, mostly not chlorinators, but BTEX from gasoline, that stuff. But pesticides, they get in the water and they'll just migrate, and we'll end up having to put in a treatment system to treat the water.
They accumulate. They don't dissipate.
They don't biodegrade, yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things that just in the back of my mind, I know we have a really great water supply, and I'd love to see it stay that way. But when the state gives us no option about what goes, you know, what's happening up gradient from our well intake, that's a problem to me.
Yeah.
And the other thing with our last upgrade, we went from an extended aeration system, a surface aeration, to an SBR system. When they're working good, you're sending water to the river that's crystal clear. But they can be upset pretty easily with pHs, bad pHs, high BODs, fats, oils, and greases, you know? And that's what we're battling. And so I don't know what the next upgrade will be, whether one of our tanks is going to be a different style of treatment or what, but we got to, you know, it's something we need to start looking at. Is to
Well,
be
we definitely know a third tank.
I would say so,
We're
yeah.
definitely looking at a third tank.
So we can separate out the
We can-
stuff.
exactly, we can
if
isolate
nothing
a tank
else.
if we need.
So that's where I'm at. And the only other thing in the water, I'm looking to purchase a pickup. I don't know if I said that last time or not. I put 25,000 in there for a pickup. I'm sure I can get enough trade-in on the one that I have. I want to get a crew cab so I have more room inside.
Jeff, there's a red one for sale right by the Jiffy Mart.
Yeah, but just so people know, that the last two trucks I had before this one, I kept for 13 years, both of them. You know, I kept them as long as possible. And when they start getting maintenance, you know, heavy, that's when I go to push them on. But this one I've had for 10 years too. And it's starting to have some body issues and stuff. And I just think now's the time to move on to a better vehicle.
And then for water and wastewater both, probably sometime after the billing in February, I'm going to kind of reevaluate the water sewer rates, where we're at, and if they need to be increased at all. So we'll be looking at that probably in March or April.
I'll be surprised if they need to be increased too much. but
Yeah, I
they're
don't think so
pretty-
either, but we haven't looked at it in a few
Right,
years.
we haven't,
so.
yeah.
It's been a while since we've gone, when we had that state requirement.
It's been 3 or 4 years, so I just want to make sure we're still in line for things.
And even, you know, to build up a reserve
Correct.
on either of these two funds for things that might come up that were, you know.
Well, and water, we increased. Sewer, we have done nothing with.
For a
in
long
a
time.
very long time, and we know we have sewer upgrades coming. So we may need to start thinking about getting a little more in reserve, but more to come on that.
Yeah.
So do we approve these both together or separately?
I would do them separate.
Separate.
Well, I'll make a motion to accept the water department budget as is for 2022.
2022,
I'll second it.
in the amount of, where are we?
Well, it's not really set the same way, Arnie.
No.
You're not
total
really-
expenditures, that's all.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So that's what we're setting at, total
Really.
expenditures?
Yeah, really, yep.
So for the water department, total expenditures of $315,287.04. So that's your motion, Heather?
Yes,
Is there-
thank you for completing it.
Lee Dakin seconded it.
Lee Dakins, a second. Any further discussion on the water department budget? All those in favor of approving that number as stated, please say aye.
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 All set with the water department. The sewer department, looking for a motion to approve the expenditures of $451,613.
So moved.
Is that the right number, I guess, huh?
Second.
You got it.
Who made the motion? Lee made the motion, and Heather, that was the second on you?
I think so.
Any
It
further,
was.
any further discussion on this? All those in favor of approving
Sewer budget.
that budget, please say aye.
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 set.
One final thing I wanted to mention, sorry, just before after the vote, but because of our new guy, you know, some of the costs have increased. But I'll tell you what, he's been worth his weight in gold. He's saved us more money than he's cost us, so, and he's gonna be a good man to take over when I'm around, when I'm ready, which will be hopefully in a couple of years, but.
Well, that's great news. That's
And,
good.
you know, and I strongly
That's
feel
great news.
it's very beneficial for him to be here a while and get a feel for everything, you know, before I'm gone, so.
It'll definitely make the transition smoother.
to have somebody on board as, you know, learning the ropes of everything that goes on and all the little idiosyncrasies of Chester.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn from our Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Lee's the motion, Lee Dakin's the second. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Good night, everybody.
Recording stopped. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.